On me. Are y'all there? We're going through the chapter 27 of the book of Acts. Let me see if you guys can see me. Okay, perfect. You're on. Hopefully y'all can see me, hear me. Let's go ahead and do chapter 27 of the book of Acts. I just got finished doing my workshop with everyone, and thank you all for coming on. It was a pretty good crowd. Over 5,000 were invited, and then I think about 1,900 were on the call, so it was great. Perfect. You can see and hear me. Thank you, Banks. I love that. All right, so let's read chapter 27. Chapter 26, or chapter 25, the theme was the road to Rome. God told Paul that he was going to have to go and testify in Rome, but we saw how far away that is from where he currently is. And for many of us, we go through seasons where we know that God has called us to be something big, and we have this big vision that's on our mind. But for whatever reason, it just seems like we're so far from that vision. And even then, I say keep going, be encouraged, because you may still have another journey to go, but God has already shown you will get there. Then we got into chapter 26, and the thought we had coming out of that was operating without a word from God. God told Paul to have courage, and then he's stuck in jail for 2 years. And the people that are over him, that are ruling at that time, are just doing favors for the Jews, and they're keeping him in jail for no reason. Even when he talks to King Agrippa says, I don't see any reason for him to be in jail. Why is he here? And yet, he's still in jail. And then he asked to speak to Caesar because he's a Roman citizen, and he believes that he should go and speak to Caesar. And they're also plotting to kill him in Jerusalem. So if he were to go back where they actually had started the case against him, they would have killed him. They had vowed they weren't going to eat. They were just going to kill him. So now he's going to Caesar, and we're in chapter 27. He just talked to Agrippa. Agrippa was like, why is he... Did I just shorten his name to Agrippa? Agrippa. It's just like black folks. We shortening names. We give everybody a nickname. Yeah, King Agrippa. He ain't want to let him go. Anyway. All right, so now we're in 27. All right. When it was decided that we were to sail to Italy, they handed over Paul. Oh, the theme that I pulled out of this one, not I, but as I prayed about it, pulled out of this was a detour. What happens when you have a detour on the road to your destiny? God has told him Rome, but now in this chapter, we're going to see that he ends up taking a detour. So let's see what happens. So, chapter 27. When it was decided that we were to sail to Italy, they handed over Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion named Julius of the imperial regiment, where he had boarded a ship of, this is a hard name, Adramyttium. We put to sea, intending, and we're back to we, so Luke must be with him again. I like Luke. Luke is the author of the book of Acts, and sometimes you see him just dictating what's happening, and then other times you see him using the word we. That means that he's with him at this point. So he has really been a good friend to Paul throughout this whole journey, because now he's boarding the ship again with Paul. So I really like that. And for y'all that haven't seen the movie Forge, I went and saw Forge today, and it was actually really good. It was about men taking on and discipling each other, like taking on mentors and doing mentorship. And I just think about that as I'm here looking at Luke, and he's taking care of and with his other brother in Christ, who is Paul, during this season. So that's really cool to see. All right. So verse 2. When we had boarded a ship of Adramyttium, we put to sea, intending to sail to ports along the coast of Asia. Aretrius, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. They got these big names, y'all. But we do too. I'm sure they would be like, how do you say idioma? Right? So I can't talk. Verse 3. The next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and allowed him to go to his friends to receive their care. Oh, that's so sweet. He hasn't been out of jail for a long time, so now they're getting on this ship, and the centurion over him is being kind. So that's nice. All right. Verse 4, when we had put out to sea from there, we sailed along to the northern coast of Cyprus, because the winds were against us. After sailing through the open sea of Sicilia and Pamphylia, we reached Myra in Lycia. There the centurion, and help me, Holy Spirit, these words. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. Sailing slowly for many days with difficulty, we arrived off the Cnidus. Since the wind did not allow us to approach it, we sailed along the south side of Crete off Salamon. With still more difficulty, we sailed along the coast and came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lasea. Y'all still with me? Verse 9. So they're sailing, but they're having a difficult time because the winds are really pushing them. So verse 9. By now, much time had passed, and the voyage was already dangerous. Since the Day of Atonement was already over, Paul gave his advice and told them, Men, I can see this voyage is heading towards disaster and heavy loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also our lives. But the centurion paid attention to the captain and the owner of the ship rather than to what Paul said. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided to set sail from there, hoping somehow to reach Phoenix, a harbor on Crete, facing the southwest and northwest, and to winter there. So you all remember they were way over here in Jerusalem. They got to go all the way up past Greece and then to Italy. So Crete is over like Turkey towards Greece. When a gentle south wind sprang up, they thought they had achieved their purpose. They weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. But before long, a fierce wind called the northeastern rushed down from the island. Since the ship was caught and unable to head into the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along. After running under the shelter, remember the theme of this is a detour on the way to Rome. So after running under the shelter of a little island called Coda, we were barely able to get control of the skiff. After hoisting it up, they used ropes and tackle and girded the ship, fearing they would run. But I'm about to be on a yacht. I really hope we don't have these kind of issues on the yacht. I'm going to need them to listen to whoever said this is about to be a disaster with heavy losses. I'm going to need them to listen to that person. Because clearly they're now going into all this trouble when they could have listened to Paul on the first part of this. But we continue. Fearing they would run aground on this citrus, they lowered the drift anchor, and in this way they were driven along. Because we were being severely battered by the storm, they began to jettison the cargo the next day. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. For many days, neither sun nor stars appeared, and the severe storm kept raging. Finally, all hope was fading that we would be saved. Can y'all imagine being on this ship at this time? Like, they're losing hope that they're even going to live through this. Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul then stood up among them and said, You men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain this damage and loss. Now I urge you to take courage, because there will be no loss of any of your lives, but only of the ship. For last night, an angel of the God I belong to, because, they don't believe in Jesus. That's why they're doing all this to get him to Caesar. But now he's like, the God that I belong to and serve stood by me and said, Don't be afraid, Paul. It is necessary for you to appear before Caesar. And indeed, God has graciously given you all those who are sailing with you. So take courage. men, because I believe, God, that it will be just the way that it was told to me, but we have to run aground on some island. I'm so glad that even when they go through a detour, God is still there. God still appears to Paul and tells him, take courage, you're still on the right path. This is still where I told you to go. You don't forget to believe in where I told you we're heading from here. You can't die now because you got places to be. You got to go testify and do my purpose, my mission, my will. So even though you're going through this right now, take courage because you're going to make it. Your life is not going to be lost. We might lose this ship, and for some of you all, you might lose this house, you might lose this job, you might lose whatever else it is, but take courage because you're not going to lose your life because God has a purpose and a plan for you. That's what he was saying right here in that part of the Bible. So verse 27, when the 14th night came, we were drifting in the Adriatic Sea, and about midnight the sailors thought they were approaching land. They took surroundings and found it to be 120 feet deep. Whoa, 120 feet deep. When they had sailed a little farther and sounded again, they found it to be 90 feet deep. Okay, they're getting closer to land. Then, fearing we might run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight to come. Some sailors tried to escape from the ship. They had let down the skiff into the sea, pretending that they were going to put out anchors from the bow. So they're like, look, we trying to escape. we gonna pretend that we're going to go put some anchors out, but we trying to swim. Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut the ropes holding the skiff and let it drop away. When it was about daylight, Paul urged them all to take food, saying, today is the 14th day that you have been waiting and going without food, having eaten nothing. Wow, could you have not ate for 2 weeks? Because of their situation in this storm, they haven't eaten for 2 weeks. So I urge you to take food, for this is for your survival, since none of you will lose a hair from your head. After he said these things and had taken some bread, he gave thanks to God in the presence of all of them, and after he broke it, he began to eat. They all were encouraged and took food themselves. In all, there were 276 of us on the ship. Wow, that's a lot of people thinking that they were about to die. There were 276 of us on the ship. When they had eaten enough, they began to lighten the ship by throwing the grain overboard into the sea. Wow, how much faith do you have to have? You're on a ship. You don't know when you're going to make it to land, but you lighten the load and throw the food off the boat. So you got to really trust now. At this point, you're starting to trust this man named Paul. Paul said we're not going to die. Paul said that we're going to live. Paul told us to even eat right now so that we can throw the food off the boat. That's a lot of trust. And this is 276 men having to trust him. So verse 39, the shipwreck. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but sighted a bay with a beach. They planned to run the ship ashore if they could. After cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea. At the same time loosening the ropes, they held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and headed for the beach. But they struck a sandbar and ran the ship aground. The bow jammed fast and remained immovable, while the stern began to break up by the pounding of the waves. The sailors' plan was to kill the prisoners so that no one could swim away and escape. Ooh, dang. But the centurion kept them from carrying out their plan because he wanted to save Paul. And so he ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to follow, some on planks and some on debris from the ship. In this way, everyone safely reached the shore. The detour on the way to Rome. One thing you have to admit is Luke definitely was a detailed writer. He wrote with such detail everything that happened during this encounter. They didn't eat for 14 days. There were 276 of them that were on this ship. They were about to kill. The soldiers were going to kill the prisoners, but the The one centurion said, stopped that so that Paul wouldn't get killed. And all of this because Paul has to get to Rome. How many things, you all can tell us too, but how many things does this make us think about? First of all, when you have a mission, all the other people around you also get protection from God too, because all of the people on that boat had to be saved so that Paul could be saved. And why did Paul need to be saved? Because he's on a mission to Rome. He's got a mission from the Lord. And the Lord said, I need to get you there. So it doesn't matter what happens. Wind can blow, water can break, the whole boat can deteriorate. But I'm going to make sure that you and the people that you are with get there safely because I have calling on your life. And other than that, God is with him again. Remember, there was that period where there wasn't a word. God told him, you've got to go testify in Rome. Then he was in jail for 2 years. But while he was in jail, it gave him a chance to speak to kings about the testimony. So God was still working and using him. This was his way to get in front of all these kings. And then they send him on this route to Rome that looks like, hey, we're about to get to the finish place, but there's a detour. And some of us, we might be going through that detour season. You were on your way, you got on the ship, you knew where you were headed, you knew that you were going in the way that God asked you to go, and then all of a sudden you get into a shipwreck and you're like, what in the world is this? Why are the winds blowing like this? Why is my health failing? Why is my friends going against me? Why is my business going down? How come the money isn't where it's supposed to be? God, I thought you called me to do this. I thought you told me that I'd be speaking in front of nations. God, I thought you told me that I would be doing, so and so, or that there was this thing that was coming into my life. But why did they just tell me this report at the doctor's office? I don't understand. Sometimes there might be a detour on the way to Rome. And we don't always know why. Like, we don't know why this has happened just yet. Hopefully we'll find some more answers in the next chapter, in chapter 28. But we do know that in the midst of all this, God still showed up. God still showed up. And let's reread what God said. In verse 23, for last night, an angel of God, of the God I belong to. And I love that he still reps God. This is the God that I serve. So I need you all, even though you might go through a storm, make sure that you're still repping God even through your storm, to both yourself and the people around you, because they need to see how you get through this and it be a testimony to the God that you belong to. So he says, for last night, an angel of the God I belong to and serve stood by me and said, God was still with him even during this storm, said, don't be afraid, Paul. Don't be afraid. We're going to take that for us too. Don't be afraid. If you're going through a storm right now, don't be afraid. Insert your name. For it is necessary for you to appear before Caesar. For it is necessary for you to still testify about the Lord God. And indeed, God has graciously given you all of those who are sailing with you. Recognize all the people that God has given to go with you on this journey. Sometimes we can feel so alone, but God has given you all the people that are on the boat with you. Your family, your friends, your co-workers, whoever it is, you've got some people around you, recognize them. Because God has given you those people too. And then it says, but we have to run aground on some island. So we still gonna go through this. We still got a little bit more of this storm to go through. Remember, they didn't eat for 14 days. It's not like God appeared and then all of a sudden everything was perfect. No, they still couldn't eat. They still were in a storm. They still weren't sure if they were going to see land yet. They still were trying to see his land coming up soon. But God said, don't be afraid. Have courage. You still got a plan to do. So be blessed. That was chapter 27 of the book of Acts. We now have one last chapter. Tomorrow's the last day of our Bible study. My mom calling. We're still going to meet at noon tomorrow. And I'm so glad that we finished. Yay! And then for those that were on the call with us tonight, we are having a 1-day intensive. I'm doing a 1 day from zero to first trade intensive in trading on September 21st. You all are more than welcome to come. We're wrapping up the Bible study, and then we'll hop back into investing stuff in this coming month. All right. The link, I'm sure that they're going to put the link in my bio, but the link for the intensive is tradeandtravel.com/intensive. And you can see more information about it. All right. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.